Imagine being told you can achieve anything, only to realize the world you inherited makes that nearly impossible. You're drowning in debt, priced out of homes, working jobs that barely pay the bills, and constantly being told you're just not trying hard enough. This isn't a dystopian film. It's the daily reality for millions of Gen Z. But how did it get this bad? And is there any way out? Generation Z, born between the late 1990s and early 2010s, has entered adulthood in a financial landscape that's drastically different from what previous generations faced. Despite being the most digitally connected and educated generation yet, many young adults are struggling to gain financial stability. Wages have stagnated while inflation has driven up the cost of nearly everything, from groceries to rent to basic services. Most Gen Z workers are either underpaid, overworked, or both. And even those with jobs are finding it difficult to build any kind of savings, let alone invest in the future. Traditional benchmarks of success, like home ownership, starting a family, or even financial independence, feel increasingly out of reach. A growing number of Gen Zers still live with their parents, not out of laziness, but simply because they can't afford not to. This isn't just an economic issue, it's an emotional one too. Constant financial stress is taking a toll on mental health, with anxiety and depression rates among young adults at an all-time high. Let's break down how we got here. To understand Gen Z's financial struggle, we need to unpack the root causes. It's not just one thing, it's a series of overlapping challenges that compound each other. The first issue is the rising cost of basic living. Young people today spend more on essentials than previous generations ever did at the same age. From rent to transportation to healthcare, every basic need has become significantly more expensive. At the same time, Gen Z is inheriting a job market with fewer long-term opportunities. Many are working multiple part-time or freelance gigs, not by choice, but because stable, full-time jobs with benefits are harder to come by. And when those jobs do exist, they often require experience that young people simply haven't had the chance to build. But perhaps the most frustrating part? Despite these very real barriers, Gen Z is constantly accused of being lazy or entitled. This disconnect between perception and reality only adds fuel to the fire, making it harder for young adults to be taken seriously as they fight for a future that feels increasingly rigged against them. One of the most pressing financial burdens Gen Z faces is the rise of fixed expenses, the bills you can't avoid paying every month. These include rent, utilities, transportation, insurance, phone bills, and increasingly subscriptions for basic digital tools and services. These fixed costs have skyrocketed, while wages have remained relatively stagnant. Rent alone can consume over half of a young worker's income, especially in urban areas where most jobs are concentrated. Add to that the cost of public transportation or maintaining a vehicle, and there's little left for savings or discretionary spending. It's not uncommon to hear stories of young professionals with decent jobs living paycheck to paycheck. They're not spending irresponsibly, they're simply trying to keep up with unavoidable costs. This makes it incredibly difficult to get ahead financially or prepare for emergencies. The reality is harsh. Many young people aren't living beyond their means. Their means are just too limited. And with every year that goes by, those fixed costs climb higher, pushing stability further out of reach. For Gen Z, credit isn't a tool, it's often a trap. Many young adults begin their financial lives already in debt, often from student loans or credit cards used to cover basic needs. And once that cycle begins, it's incredibly hard to escape. One of the biggest culprits? Predatory interest rates. Whether it's credit cards with rates north of 20%, payday loans targeting low-income workers, or financing plans with hidden fees, the system is designed to keep borrowers locked in and paying far more than they originally borrowed. This creates a cycle of debt that drains income, destroys credit scores, and blocks access to better financial options in the future. And while financial literacy programs exist, they're often too little, too late, coming only after the damage is done. Even responsible young adults who make regular payments find themselves stuck due to compound interest. The more you pay, the more you owe. It's not about irresponsibility. It's about a financial system built to profit off the most vulnerable. A common criticism aimed at Gen Z is that they spend too much on luxuries, expensive coffee, streaming subscriptions, the latest gadgets. But this criticism often ignores a crucial detail. The line between luxury and need has blurred in the modern world. Today, a smartphone isn't just a luxury. It's your map, your job search tool, your banking platform, your social lifeline, your access to healthcare and education. Streaming services replace cable TV, Gym memberships substitute for public sports infrastructure, and delivery apps step in where affordable food options are scarce. Critics also fail to consider how Gen Z grew up. This is a generation raised in a digital environment where image and connection are currency. Social participation often depends on having the right tech, the right clothes, or the right experiences. Rejecting these things can mean social exclusion, a price many are unwilling to pay. In reality, Gen Z is more frugal than people think. Surveys show many young adults are budgeting carefully, using financial apps, comparing prices, and cutting back on non-essentials. But when the essentials are so expensive, even the most disciplined budget can fall short. Perhaps no issue better symbolizes Gen Z's economic struggle than housing. Once considered a rite of passage into adulthood, homeownership is now a distant dream for many. Property prices have surged dramatically in recent years. In some cities, home values have more than doubled within a decade. This rise has completely outpaced wage growth. Renting hasn't been a relief either. Landlords, knowing that demand is high and supply is limited, have raised rents across the board. But it's not just about price. The housing shortage, driven by decades of underbuilding and zoning laws that limit new development, has left many urban areas unaffordable. Even modest apartments come with astronomical monthly costs, and competition for them is fierce. This forces many young adults to live farther from jobs and social hubs, increasing transportation costs and isolation. Others remain with family far longer than previous generations, often contributing financially to multi-generational households while delaying milestones like independence, marriage, or parenthood. The dream of having a home, a place that is yours, safe and stable, has become an uphill battle. For Gen Z, stability is no longer something you work toward. It's something you fight for every single day. It used to be that going to college meant securing your future. But for Gen Z, it often means mortgaging it. Student debt has ballooned into a crisis, with millions of young adults carrying burdens that can take decades to repay. And it's not just tuition. Housing, books, food, and basic living costs drive up the total amount borrowed. Even with part-time jobs and scholarships, most students graduate owing tens of thousands of dollars. What's worse, the return on this investment isn't what it used to be. A degree no longer guarantees a well-paying job, and many graduates find themselves underemployed, working in jobs that don't even require their education just to stay afloat. Debt impacts every major life decision: where to live, whether to start a family, even what jobs to take. Many avoid entrepreneurial risks or further education because they simply can't afford more debt. And for those who didn't attend college, they often face a different kind of penalty: limited access to higher-paying careers, societal judgment, and fewer networking opportunities. In either case, the system has created a trap, one where education, meant to open doors, instead locks young people into long-term financial struggle. Older generations often reminisce about college as an affordable path to upward mobility. But the experience Gen Z faces is almost unrecognizable compared to what their parents or grandparents lived through. Tuition fees have soared over the past few decades, growing at rates far beyond inflation. In the past, a student could work a part-time job during the summer and cover most of their annual tuition. Today, even full-time work may not be enough to stay enrolled without loans. At the same time, the perceived value of a degree has diminished. The job market is saturated with graduates, and many roles that once required only a high school diploma now demand a bachelor's degree, not because the job itself changed, but because the competition has. Additionally, universities have evolved into corporate-like entities. Marketing budgets, luxury student housing, and sprawling administrative departments drive costs higher, while actual academic investment often remains stagnant. Many students feel like customers in a billion-dollar industry, pressured to pay ever-growing prices for a product with unclear outcomes. Gen Z isn't rejecting education, they're questioning whether the traditional system still delivers on its promises. And increasingly, they're looking for alternatives, online certifications, trade schools, or skipping college entirely to avoid the debt trap. Entering the workforce used to mean stepping into adulthood with a sense of purpose and potential. For Gen Z, it often means stepping into chaos. The modern job market is unstable and fragmented. Full-time positions with benefits are harder to find, especially for recent graduates. Many employers prefer contract or freelance labor to avoid offering healthcare, paid leave, or job security. Gen Z is also the most digitally native generation, which gives them an edge in tech-savvy roles, but it also means they're competing in a global market. Remote work has opened opportunities, but also intensified competition, with jobs outsourced or automated at record speed. Add to this the gig economy, where people juggle multiple side hustles, food delivery, ride-sharing, freelance tasks, all without the protections of a traditional job. It offers flexibility, yes, but little in the way of stability, career progression, or retirement planning. This has created a paradox. Gen Z is working more hours and pursuing more opportunities than ever before, yet still struggling to build sustainable careers. They're forced to be entrepreneurs, marketers, and strategists just to survive. In a world where your job title might change every few months, building a future feels more uncertain than ever. Despite the challenges Gen Z faces, they often meet with condescension rather than compassion from the working world. Many employers dismiss them as lazy, entitled, or lacking resilience. These stereotypes are not only outdated, they're harmful. What critics call entitlement is often a demand for fairness. Gen Z is vocal about work-life balance, mental health, and ethical labor practices, not because they're weak, but because they've seen firsthand how the old system failed their parents. They watched the 2008 financial crash, the COVID-19 pandemic, and multiple waves of corporate layoffs. They're not disillusioned because they're soft. They're disillusioned because they're informed. Many Gen Z workers are ambitious, creative, and adaptive, traits essential in today's fast-changing economy. They value purpose over prestige and flexibility over hierarchy. Yet they're often underestimated because they challenge traditional workplace norms. This disconnect creates tension. Young workers want to grow and contribute, but feel stifled by rigid systems that don't value their input. Employers, meanwhile, misinterpret this frustration as laziness or disrespect. If companies want to survive, they need to stop criticizing and start listening. Gen Z isn't afraid of hard work. They're simply refusing to play by rules that no longer make sense. For all the hardship, there are reasons to believe Gen Z might be the generation that breaks the cycle. They're politically engaged, socially conscious, and technologically empowered. More young people are voting, protesting, organizing, and pushing for structural reforms than ever before. They understand that real change requires collective action, and they're showing up for it. Gen Z is also driving innovation. They're building businesses, starting movements, and leveraging the internet to bypass traditional gatekeepers. Many are embracing entrepreneurship not just out of necessity, but as a way to take control of their futures. In workplaces, they're demanding accountability. They ask hard questions during interviews, call out toxic cultures, and expect employers to stand for something beyond profit. They've helped normalize remote work, flexible schedules, and more humane company policies. And importantly, they're rejecting shame. They know it's not a personal failure to struggle in a rigged system. By being honest about their experiences, they're paving the way for future generations to speak up sooner, push back harder, and dream bigger. Hope for Gen Z doesn't lie in returning to the past. It lies in building something entirely new. Generation Z is not broken, they're burdened. They're not lazy, entitled, or disinterested in success. They are navigating a world shaped by forces far beyond their control, an economy that has shifted, a job market that has fractured, and a society that often refuses to see their struggles as valid. But despite all of this, they persist, they adapt, they challenge, and they imagine something better. What Gen Z is facing isn't just a financial crisis, it's a generational reckoning. It's a moment that forces us to ask, how do we want the future to look? What kind of world are we building? And who is being left behind in the process? The answer doesn't lie in blaming young people for struggling. It lies in confronting the systems that make that struggle inevitable. It lies in empathy, in reform, and in listening, truly listening to what this generation is saying. Because if we dismiss Gen Z as the problem, we miss the opportunity to let them lead us to solutions. And make no mistake, they are ready to lead, not because they want to, but because they have to. If this video gave you a new perspective or helped you understand the world Gen Z is navigating, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Your support helps amplify these conversations, and they're more important now than ever.